Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 2nd of October, and while we were looking for volatility to pick up, as I mentioned when I sent out the indicators, that it looked as though October would be a significant volatility. And in this particular case, we have the political winds that are taking place, as well as some of the economic situations out of Europe, China, and that. And so it's presenting quite a few headwinds, if you will. We had been in this longer-term back and forth where cyan had been overread for quite a while, and we started to dip down right about here as we were just playing back and forth across the ABM yellow, which I considered that 2990 was sort of the back and forth, and every time you got to move above cyan with steel, looking for a little bit of a pop, but every time back below you were looking for a little bit worse. It held up quite a bit. Every time it dipped down, we kept supporting off the ABM green down at the bottom, and then we started hitting resistance at the ABM yellow. And that happened for several days as we continued to go back and forth, and looked like we might pop back above it, but we had midterm buyers in green, if I can highlight right here, started to fade the other day, even though we ended up towards the ABM yellow, and the steel was still below cyan, and then boom, got just right back up to the ABM yellow, came back below it, and then boom, the floor fell out, and I was starting to post that live as we were in the middle of some of these trades, and I just put one up, and then boom, the floor completely fell out and started breaking through. While key, and once you break through that ABM green down at the bottom, then it's just a free fall situation. Positive extreme wise, there wasn't anything other than this yellow one right back over here that was close, and I think we just kind of filled that one right back in now. Not a guarantee on that to fill back in, but it was a likely location. Plus we had some positive extremes from 5K and that needed to be filled from prior. So worked out pretty well, and we have dipped below the red line, so you can see the little dashes right there. It's kind of an equal sign that pops up, and then every time you revisit those, it will clear it like it did over here. But if we gap up or anything like that, then it'll continue to cross until we get a fill back of it. The asterisk sort of lets you know that you've taken that out. So that's kind of, if you see that popping up on your screen now, that's what that's indicating. So, still expresses weakness, no change there. We could still, with the steel this close to cyan, any little pops up there could be a short-term pop-up within a broader short configuration. We had full reset where the green was starting to come across right back here when we had found support at the green ABM that led to the initial pop, but didn't take long for that to start falling apart, did it? And from an NQ standpoint, a little bit stronger, I think, from its general position right there, because it had literally still maintained itself. It had been weaker in general than the S&P overall, so that it fared a little bit better, not too big a shock, that it kind of evens out the proportions of it. And the euro bouncing back to the breakdown, right where that zero line was, and the breakdown currents there. We finally moved above the zero line, so it's still within a broader long-term short that it's been in. This was just a little bit of a reprieve given the weakness that the U.S. markets were starting to express. Doesn't change the fundamentals overall in Europe. And oil, well, this is starting to get a little bit more interesting as it gets down into this broken area. We've had these dips below the red line all the way back from here when we ended up with a strong DOC spread right here at the ABM yellow line after the freak out from the Saudi situation. But this is something we have to watch, because it becomes more troubling if it's an indication of slower economic growth worldwide. So we will see if that breaks out at the lower portion of it, because that would be something to look at going in towards year end. And gold rebounding slightly on the weakness overall, but it just broken down below the 50, still dipped below the red line. So this weakness isn't over yet. Short-term buyers kind of jump back in there as a safe haven from all the chaos. And when we look at the the 5K chart, we had started out with a strong move up. DOC spread came back down right to the 50% line, and then it sort of like evened out and then started to get a little bit of an improvement. And early DOC spread started right here, but we were still in rising shakeout, so it was just a matter of waiting for that to start to fade. Began to get some separation right in this bar right here. It was a little early, but we were starting to get back towards the highs on this bar, which is where I started to attack for a second run of it. And then boom, this bar was the bar that began it all, and where we were posting once we broke below the EBM yellow, which was right up there at the 91 range, again just above that daily 90. And once we went below there, boom. And even though it popped up a fraction, it still gave another opportunity to enter right at that 50%, and then boom, cascade. We had a couple little soft buys that took place, but we knew that without that reset of steel, that as soon as you get a separation, becomes a great opportunity to attack to the short side again. And boom, that's exactly what happened, and it kept doing that every time it broke through. Whether you took it initially right at the first one or waited for that steel to cross, you can do either one of those. When you know you're in this big weak pattern, I was fine to go ahead and be a little early to attack them, but you certainly could wait for the steel breaking. It was still significant of a decline. And then once we got into the bottom, we started to see a much stronger DOC red. We had this secondary pivot that it needed to cross to kind of prove that it was going to be a lasting move, but it was still worthwhile because you had the secondary pivot and move above with green crossing above cyan at that particular point. It still had some issues before it finally took off, but it was a significant improvement. And like I pointed out, we were right about here that it didn't look like it was that strong at this particular point. It started to break down, especially when we got to this point. And so we put in a tight stop there and then was ready to flip to the short side of it, which really started to gain up some strength here when the green dipped below and the cyan came back above. And that's led to where we're currently at right now. We'll go ahead and span that up so that we can get a close-up of it. And that's about where it is right now. It was interesting because within this long, broad move, I pointed out how we dipped right here that ended the broader short. That didn't mean that you were going to skyrocket or anything. It just meant that the overall big move had taken place and that we had a reset. And so you could just look for any move in between. And in this new short right here, that's where we're getting kind of a mixed, kind of flat basing right now. So we'll just be able to play that as it goes, but all in all, it was a fantastic day and really worked well with the readings as we had them. The 50K had been long within this broader move up here and captured it a little bit later than what we were able to see up at the 5K standpoint, which is all the way up here at 90. Which is why I prefer on these, even when you get a signal like this, is to have your entry in and then place your own stop as you have the move, and that way you can continue to adjust it according to either the prints that come in place and or utilizing the smaller time frame is something we actually went over a little bit in the Skype chat from before, and proved to be extraordinarily effective with regard to how things played out. So that's the long and the short of it for now. As always, though, I will keep putting up charts on the Skype chat, and anything relevant pops up, I certainly will be there to point it out. As always, though, trade well and talk to you later.